Drop, you can't ignore it. I'm transforming now these cars and planes, I'm always boarding. Just out touring down in Charlotte like I play for Hornets.
Oh man, if that music don't get you hyped, I don't know what will. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How you beautiful people doing out there in social media land? You are tuned in to TFG Sports Media Show, the best 30-minute sports show on social media. And I am your host, the sports guy, Kendrick Henderson. I hope you are having a terrific Tuesday on this nice, pretty, seasonably warm day in Texas. But you know Texas weather, couple of days, in the next 2 days, it could get a little dicey here. So keep your eye on the weather report. Make sure you got all your needs and all that stuff. And if you don't have to be out on the road on Thursday, is what they're saying, stay home. Now, hopefully this won't be another February event like we had last February. They're saying it's not supposed to be, but, you know, it is the weather, so we just never know. So, again, you're watching the TFG Sports Show. I'm your host, Kendrick. Glad you could join me. Now, before we get going, I'd like for you to come on in here. Let me know you're watching. Say something to me in the comments. Make sure you hit that like, share button. Share it to all your social media platforms. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel, TFG Sports Media on YouTube. And also make sure you follow TFG Sports Media on Facebook and TFG TV. All that good stuff. So there you have it. So we good to go. Now let's jump right into it. Before we get into our topics, though, we got some breaking news. First of all, former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores has filed a lawsuit against the NFL and 3 NFL teams because of discriminatory hiring practice. He just filed that lawsuit today, and we'll talk more about that later in my final thoughts. And also, Bucs quarterback Tom Brady did make it official today. He released a statement, and he said on his podcast that he is officially retiring from football after 22 seasons. So we'll talk about more of that once we get going here. So let's get into our first topic. We're talking about a recap of the NFL conference championships, the AFC and the NFC conference championships we had this past weekend. We now know who's going to the Super Bowl. We have the Cincinnati Bengals out of the AFC taking on the LA Rams out of the NFC. And if anybody picked the Cincinnati Bengals to be in the Super Bowl, I know you're lying. Nobody did. But here's a nice little tidbit, little fact about this Super Bowl, which will be played in LA at SoFi Stadium, the Rams' home field. But the Rams aren't the home team. Here's the thing about the Super Bowl. They alternate each year. Each conference alternate each year on who's the home team, or the NFC team or the AFC team. Well, last year, the Super Bowl was in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was the home team. Well, this year, it's the AFC's turn to be the home team. So the Cincinnati Bengals will be the home team at the Rams' home stadium. Go figure. But so let's get to the AFC Championship game. Cincinnati Bengals pulled off the upset. They went into Arrowhead and beat the Kansas City Chiefs 27-24 in overtime. The Bengals kicker Evan McPherson hit the 31-yard game-winning field goal with 9:22 left in OT. The Bengals are heading to the Super Bowl for the first time in 33 years. Do you remember who they played 33 years ago? I'm going to give you a minute. San Francisco 49ers. I was hoping maybe for a repeat of that 89 Super Bowl, but we won't get it. We'll talk about the NFC in just a second. So the Bengals are heading back, and do you know who the quarterback was of the Bengals then? You probably do. You probably Googled it. It was Boomer Esiason. Now, the Bengals did erase an 18-point deficit, tying an AFC title game record for largest comeback in an AFC Championship game history. And the Bengals' Von Bell intercepted Patrick Mahomes on the third play of overtime to give them the ball and for them to go down and kick the winning field goal. Now, the Chiefs had been hosting. This had made their 4th AFC Championship game to host at home, and they were looking to go to their 3rd straight Super Bowl. But the Bengals had other plans. Now, the Bengals had won 6 or 7 games against the Chiefs, including 2 this season. So this game was one of, it was up and down. The Chiefs jumped out. I want to say they jumped out and they scored touchdowns on their first 3 possessions. But I will say the key possession, I think, that really put this game in perspective was at the end of right before the half. The Chiefs they were inside the 5. They could have scored. They really could have kicked the field goal. They decided to go for it on 4th down. Mahomes threw the ball to Tyreek Hill to get him one-on-one outside on the defender, and he couldn't shake him. And they stopped him, and that was a big win for the Bengals because I believe if the Chiefs would have scored a touchdown on that series, this game would have been over. Now, on the flip side, if they would have taken the points, which I think you should always take the points, this game they probably would have won this game by 3. But hindsight is 2020. Now, let's talk about the Bengals quarterback, Mr. Joe Burrow. Listen, this guy is ice cold right now. He's playing like a vet, Obviously, he's used to the big stage. He played at LSU. He won a national championship there. And he's playing ice cold. He's doing some things for a second-year quarterback. That's really he's taking command of that offense. He was 23 of 38 for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. He got the weapons, Mr. Jamar Chase. He didn't have a big game, but he was in the game. He had 6 receptions for 54 yards and 1 touchdown. And wide receiver T. Higgins came up with some big catches as well. He had 6 receptions for 103 yards. So again, the Cincinnati Bengals, and defensively, they were solid. The Chiefs came out and did what they did. Again, they were efficient. The Chiefs were. They scored on their first 3 drives. But then the second half, the Bengals, I don't know if it was good Bengals defense or inept Kansas City Chiefs offense, because I'll be honest, I would say Patrick Mahomes did not look like himself that second half. He was out of sync. He was freestyling. He was doing a lot of freestyling that I hadn't seen him do. And he just making some mistakes that he hadn't really done. Earlier in the regular season, he was kind of, doing a little bit more freestyling. But that second half, he just wasn't in it. I don't know. He just hit a funk. And the Bengals defense had something to say about that as well, because they sacked him 4 times. He was sacked 4 times. A couple of those sacks he shouldn't have taken. He was just, again, like I said, he was freestyling. So, again, everybody had their money on the Chiefs. I know I had picked the Chiefs. I didn't think the Bengals had a shot. And they came in there and they shocked the world. The underdog right now, I would say this. Vegas really, the last time I checked, Vegas had the Bengals as a 3.5-point underdog to the Rams. So they got it pretty close. So, and I think that game will be close to Super Bowl. But again, hats off to the Cincinnati Bengals for shocking the world. Not only did, Cincinnati's had a lot to cheer about this season as far as football. The Cincinnati Bearcats made it, into the playoffs, even though they lost to Alabama. But they made it to the playoffs. Now the Bengals are headed to the Super Bowl after 33 years. So I'm sure we'll see a lot of the old Cincinnati Bengals players. You'll see a lot of them probably on sports talk radio, this and that, interviews. Boomy Esiason already works, I believe, for CBS. So he will have a whole lot of insight in how they're feeling on the Bengals finally getting back to the Super Bowl. So that's a wrap up for the AFC Championship game. Again, Bengals defeat the Kansas City Chiefs 27-24 in overtime. The Kansas City Chiefs season ends at 14-6. And will offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy get a job? I'll talk about a little bit of that in my final thoughts later on. Now, let's get to the NFC Championship game. The LA Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, this game, I thought that the 49ers was going to find a way. They've been riding that magical wave. They knocked out my Packers last week, and I figured they was going to continue to ride that wave. And this game was close. Like all these playoff games have been great for the 2021-2022 season. But close, but no cigar for the San Francisco 49ers. The Rams are going to the Super Bowl. They defeat the 49ers 20-17. The Rams erased a 10-point deficit against the 49ers to get the win and advance to Super Bowl 56. Now, this makes the second year in a row, again, like I said earlier, that the home team will be playing in the Super Bowl. Tampa Bay, again, they played in the Super Bowl in their home stadium last season. The Rams did snap a 6-game losing streak to their division rivals. Rams had been 0-14 under head coach Sean McVay, went behind by 10 or more points entering the fourth quarter, including the playoffs. Now, the Rams will play for the fifth time in franchise history in the Super Bowl, and the second time since they moved from St. Louis following the 2016 season. Now, key, Matt Stafford. We all know the Rams went all in this year. They traded for Matt Stafford, Jared Goff to Detroit. They ended up picking up Jalen Ramsey last season, which was draft picks. They ended up picking Von Miller this season as well. They've traded away all their draft picks. They don't even have a first-round draft pick until 2024. They basically said win or bust. They went all in this year, and they got one more game to see if this is going to be, if it was worth it. If it was worth, I guess you could call it bargaining your future for the present. So we're going to see what happens in the Super Bowl. Now, Matthew Stafford, who's a Texas native from Highland Park, and a Georgia quarterback. So he could be celebrating. Not only did his Georgia Bulldogs win the national title, he might win a Super Bowl. Now, Stafford would be the 7th quarterback to start a Super Bowl in his first season with a team. Tom Brady did it in 2020, obviously, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Trent Dilfer did it in 2000 with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Rams quarterback, Matthew Stafford, had a solid game. He was 31-45 for 337 yards, 2 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. Now, you know, his turnovers has been his Achilles heel, but he has kept them to a minimum these last couple of games. He only had 1 interception. Wide receiver Cooper Kupp is still in that zone. He's still the guy. He had 11 receptions for 142 yards, 2 touchdowns, and another key pickup that I didn't mention, Odell Beckham Jr. With the Rams losing Robert Woods, Odell Beckham Jr. has came in and showed that he wasn't the problem in Cleveland. He had 9 receptions for 113 yards. Now, let's talk about the 49ers real quick. I think we all know this was probably the last game for Jimmy Garoppolo. I just think, sometimes it's time to move on. He didn't have a bad game, but he had that interception, right? He was getting rushed by Aaron Donald, and he just threw the ball up. And I would just say Traven Howard caught that, who is a Texas native as well. He intercepted that, and that was the key to that game. Just a bad turnover at a bad time for the 49ers. And wide receiver Deebo Samuel, what can you say about this up-and-coming star? There was a really, really emotional shot of him on the bench, with the towel over his head, and Odell Beckham Jr. came over and was consoling him and saying something to him. And that just shows you, man, sometimes all the reports we hear about a lot of these players, we don't know the whole story. I give hats off to Odell Beckham Jr. for going over there and trying to lift the spirits of that young fella. Like I say, Deebo Samuel's up and coming star, and he's got a lot more games to play, a lot more plays to make, and I think he'll be okay. Tight end George Kittle, he had only two receptions, 27 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, I will say the 49ers appeared. This was their 17th conference championship, the most in NFL history. So again, the Rams going to the Super Bowl. Eric Dickerson was on Undisputed today, and he's ecstatic. He's one of the marquee names from that franchise. So to see a lot of the you're gonna see a lot of the former players from the Rams. I'm sure we'll hear from Kurt Warner, obviously. We'll hear from Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, Marshall Faulk, hopefully. Some of those guys that played on the last Rams team to win the Super Bowl. So again, Super Bowl is set up February 13th. We got the LA Rams at Cincinnati, because Cincinnati is the home team. Super Bowl 56 should be a good one. And you can't forget about the halftime entertainment. Going back to California love, we're going to have Snoop, going to have Eminem, going to have Dr. Dre, going to have Mary J., and we're going to have my namesake, Kendrick Lamar, performing at halftime. So get your popcorn ready. A lot of people say they don't think the Super Bowl is going to be highly watched. I think it is. And I will be the first to say I'm going to actually watch the halftime show for a change. Excuse me, I had to get a drink of water. So that's our recap of the NFL Conference Championships. Now let's move on to the other news of the day. Let's move on. Tom Brady. Some call him the GOAT. Some say he's one of the best, but he may not be the best. But Tom Brady made it official today on his podcast, and he released a statement saying that he is hanging it up after 22 seasons, 20 of those with the Patriots and 2 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's hanging it up 22 seasons, 7 Super Bowl wins, and appeared in 10 Super Bowls. I don't think we will ever see that again. Now, let me read over read over his achievements. Again, 22 NFL seasons. He's 44 years old. He said he wanted to play to 45. He almost made it. I think his born day is in August. He played 22 NFL seasons, 20 with the Patriots, 2 for the Buccaneers. Most touchdown passes in NFL history, 624. Most passing yards in NFL history, 520 yards. 243 regular season wins, most in NFL history. Most playoff wins in NFL history, 35, 19 more than any other quarterback. Joe Montana has 16. Most Super Bowl appearances, 10, with 7 wins. 5-time Super Bowl MVP, most in NFL history. All-time playoff leader in touchdown passes, 86. Passing yards, 13,049. And completions, 1,165. 15 Pro Bowl selections, most in NFL history. 3-time NFL MVP, 2007, 2010, 2017, 2009 Comeback Player of the Year. Remember, he had that knee injury. He missed the whole season when he was in New England, and he was named to the NFL 100 all-time team, 1 of 10 quarterbacks. That's a resume. If that ain't a resume, I don't know what a resume is. Tom Brady is hanging it up after 22 seasons. Now, the interesting thing he did in his statement, he mentioned everybody with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he didn't mention the New England Patriots at all. That I wonder was I know that he proofread that before he put that statement out. So I guess the ending with Tom Brady and the Patriots wasn't as a happy ending as most of us think, because you would have thought when you play 20 years with an organization that you would at least mention them in your statement, but he didn't mention them. So that's something that, I'm gonna dig more into and see, can I find some information on that. But again, Tom Brady's retiring. As far as GOATs, the GOAT conversation is so difficult because every player is different positions, especially in football. It's hard to say who is the greatest player of all time. Let's be honest, Tom Brady isn't the most athletic guy. He was a 6th-round draft choice out of Michigan. He became the quarterback at New England by default. Really, Drew Bledsoe got hurt. What if Drew Bledsoe would have never got hurt? Will we even see Tom Brady? So the stars just aligned for him. But he took advantage of the opportunity, and he is a winner. You cannot fault. You cannot say. I mean, he went to 10 Super Bowls and won 7 of them, 7-3. And I know Joe Montana's 4-0, but he went to 10 of them, 7-3. I know Joe Montana didn't have any interceptions or turnovers in Super Bowls, and I think Joe Montana is right up there. He's a GOAT too. But I think if we're talking about GOATs, if we're talking about wins and winning Super Bowls, I think you got to say Tom Brady's the GOAT. You got to give that man his props. So again, and he did it with another franchise. He completely went to a whole different franchise and turned it around and won the Super Bowl in his first year. So, I have favorites. Tom Brady isn't one of my favorite quarterbacks, but he's probably one of a player that I respect, because a favorite doesn't necessarily mean they have to be a GOAT. Your favorite doesn't have to be a GOAT or whatever. But I have to say, at the quarterback position, at this point, Tom Brady is the gold standard. He's the bar. Him and Joe Montana is right there. I mean, that's the bar. They set the standard. So hats off to Tom Brady. Right off in the sunset. Enjoy your wife, enjoy your kids, and enjoy the rest of your life. And we'll see you in the Hall of Fame, because he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. No doubt about it. And it's funny that he and Ben Roethlisberger basically retired the same week. So they both probably will get in the Hall of Fame at the same time. So again, Tom Brady retires. He officially made it official today after 22 seasons, 7 Super Bowl wins, and 10 Super Bowl appearances. So let's move on to the next one, Mr. Producer. Now, we had a a head coach, Sean Payton, decide to step. A lot of people said he was retiring, and that was incorrect. He decided to step down as the New Orleans Saints head coach. That was kind of a shocker. I didn't realize it. I mean, when I saw that, I didn't believe it. But he decided to step away from coaching the New Orleans Saints after 16 seasons with the team. He's 58 years old, so he's not. I mean, he's 58 isn't old. So I know head coaching is a tough profession, so he may got a little burnt out. But he's 58. He says he doesn't plan to coach another team in 2022. He's interested in looking into opportunities to be an analyst. That's the word on the street. Now, Sean Payton is the winningest coach in Saints history. He was hired in 2006. He's tied for 21st in NFL history with 152 career victories. His record is 152-89 with a 631 winning percentage, not including his season long suspension in 2012. You all remember Bountygate 2012. He was suspended, as well as defensive coordinator Greg Williams, I believe, was suspended once the NFL did its investigation. Now, Payton is 9-8 in the postseason. He has 4 seasons of 11 plus wins and a Super Bowl win in 2009. Now, when this broke, the speculation and all the stuff started happening, and you know where the speculation was coming from them Dallas Cowboys, because we all know Sean Payton's relationship with Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. He was the offensive coordinator under Bill Parcells when he was here. Jerry and Sean Payton are really close, have a really close relationship, and I believe Sean Payton still has a house in Dallas, in Plano. And the speculation and all that was McCarthy coming back. Dan Quinn eventually stayed. They offered him probably, I'm sure, extension and a lot more money. Quinn turned down head coaching interviews. But the thing was McCarthy going to be fired? Well, Jones nipped that in the bud on 105.3 The Fan and said, no, McCarthy is going to be here another year. Now, the thing is, Sean Payton can't go coach another. I mean, if he does coach another team, that team has to compensate the Saints. So that means giving up some draft picks and maybe, some moolah too. So here's my thing. This is what I think going to happen. I think McCarthy is going to get 1 year here in Dallas. Think they're going to decide to go they mutual part and go they mutual ways, part ways, and then I think Sean Payton will be coaching in Dallas in 2023. That's my speculation. I think that's what's going to happen. I think you'll see Sean Payton as the next Dallas Cowboys head coach in 2023. So again, New Orleans Saints head coach Sean Payton stepped down, and it was a difficult year for the Saints. They had a lot of injuries. They lost like 58 players to injury. They lost their starting quarterback Jameis Winston to injury for the year. They had COVID issues, so they had a lot going on. So Payton said this was a very trying year for him as a coach. So he just needed to step away, take a break, and do some TV work. And hats off to him. It's good to be able to have opportunities to do stuff you like, and maybe just recharge and come back and see what you can do. So again, Saints head coach Sean Payton steps down. Don't be surprised to see him in Dallas on the Dallas Cowboys sideline in 2023. Now, let's go to our next topic, Mr. Producer. Now we're talking about HBCU and a college senior bowl. This is the first year that the HBCU will hold a combine for the NFL. You would have never thought this, but you would have thought this had been happening. I think Coach Prime at Jackson State and Doug Williams and James Harris as well, who were HBCU athletes and alums, they were unhappy with the NFL in the way that they aren't been drafting HBCU players, because it's players in the HBCU. The NFL did not draft one player from the HBCU this past draft. And Coach Prime and Doug Williams and they want to change that. So College Senior Bowl, they held HBCU combine. So they had here's a few players that shine at this combine. I'm just gonna read a couple of their names. First of all, let me say that this combine was held at the University of South Alabama. According to reports, most of the players will either be late round picks or undrafted free agents. Now, some of the names that stood out at this combine: Virginia State safety Will Adams, He did 21 reps on the 225 bench press, had a 40.5-inch vertical leap, and he ran a 4.57 in the 40-yard dash. Another standout, Alabama State running back Ezra Gray did 10-foot-3 broad jump, 38.5 vertical jump, but he didn't run the 40-yard dash because he has a hamstring issue and he didn't want to tweak that. Now, North Carolina A&T, another standout running back, Jermaine Martin, 5'10", 211 pounds. He didn't test, but impressed scouts catching the ball in positional drills. And Florida A&M guard Keenan Forbes, he was named first team HBCU All-American at right guard in both his seasons as a full-time starter at Florida A&M. And last but not least, Southern wide receiver Marquise McClain, according to scouts, impressed with his size and fluidity, stood out in receiver drills. He recorded a 10-foot-2 broad jump. He began his career at Auburn and decided to transfer to Southern. So, again, the HBCU held a combine, college senior bowl. Hopefully, it's 39 players from different HBCU teams to be able to try out in front of these NFL scouts. And hopefully, the NFL will do a better job because we know there's some players in the HBCU. I mean, I definitely have been keeping my eye on it a lot more. And I would have to say it's because of Coach Prime at Jackson State. The light has been shown on him and what he's done. And now you got Grambling State that's going to be getting some light too because of the hiring of former NFL coach of the Cleveland Browns and Raiders, Hugh Jackson. So the HBCU got some players. So let's see what the NFL do. You know, the HBCU has put a lot of players in the past in the NFL. So hopefully this combine will help get these guys some exposure. So now we're down to my final thoughts. And our final thoughts tonight, and I had mentioned this last week. There's nine NFL coaching vacancies in the league. Houston Texans, Minnesota Vikings, Miami Dolphins, Jacksonville Jaguars, Las Vegas Raiders, Denver Broncos, New York Giants, Chicago Bears, and the New Orleans Saints. That's 9. There have already been 4 hires. Josh McDaniels at the Raiders, who was the offensive coordinator with the Patriots. The Denver Broncos hired Nathaniel Hackett, who was the offensive coordinator with the Packers. The Giants hired Brian Daboll. He was offensive coordinator with the Bills. And the Chicago Bears have hired Matt Eberflus, who was defensive coordinator with the Colts. All those coaches are white. There's only one black head coach right now in the league of the 32 teams, and that's head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin. Now, at the beginning of the show, I broke the news that former Miami Dolphins head coach Brian Flores has filed a lawsuit against racism in hiring practice by the NFL. He's filed that against the NFL and teams, and 3 teams in particular: the Dolphins, the Broncos, and the Giants. Now, according to his lawsuit, one of the NFL's teams employ 1 black head coach, again, that's Pittsburgh Steelers, 4 employ a black offensive coordinator, and 11 employ a black defensive coordinator. So the NFL, which is probably 75% black, they look like me, you only got 1 head coach. And now you got Brian Flores, who's filed a lawsuit because he says some of the interviewing practices have been racially motivated. You know, it's the NFL has to do better. I think this lawsuit, I applaud him for doing it. Where does this go? I don't know. It may get thrown out, but you got to start somewhere. Now some would say, okay, Brian Flores, what was your record? Well, his record, he's only had 3 seasons. He was 24-25, but his last 2 seasons, he was 10-6 in 2020, and he was 9-8 this last season. According to alleged rumors that he was fired because of lack of communication with upper management, according to rumors and reports. And there's other things that's coming out with Brian Flores and his time with the Dolphins. He did interview with the Saints on today. I did find that he did that was confirmed. And I'm just wondering now, what team shy away from trying to hire him or even interview him? Because this Rooney Rule is really just a it's a facade, because a lot of these teams already know who they're going to hire, and then they've already probably made the under the table handshake with the guy, and then they have to bring in a person of color to interview just to satisfy the Rooney Rule, so they won't get docked, so they won't get, get a slap on the hand or lose a draft pick. So the Rooney Rule, even though I thought the intentions when it came in, the intentions were good, but it's just not effective. So we got 9 NFL head coaching positions open in the NFL. 4 have been filled by, and they've been white. So we got 5 more. So I'm going to keep my eye on to see if they're going to fill those with some capable and some comparable and some experienced black head coaches. Todd Bowles is still out there. Leslie Frazier is still out there. Eric Bieniemy is out there. Byron Leftwich is out there. Raheem Morris is out there. It's some capable coaches out there. Come on, NFL teams. But, at the end of the day, until people of color, until we be able to get our own team, they can do what they want. They can they can sugarcoat it and cover it up, because they run the system. They run it. So until we get our own, until we can purchase our own team and hire our own people, this is the game that it is. We just got to keep on them. We got to keep fighting. So those are my final thoughts. This has been the TFG Sports Media Show. I'm your host, Kendrick. Thanks for joining me tonight. Don't forget to join me here every Tuesday night at 6:30. Make sure you come in and comment. Make sure you share. Make sure you subscribe to the sports channel, TFG Sports Media on YouTube. Make sure you follow me and like the page, TFG Sports Media, here on Facebook, and Kendrick Sports Hustle page on Facebook as well. Now, next Tuesday, I might have something special. We may have a special report coming from out of state. I can't let you know about that. You just got to tune in here next Tuesday night at 6:30. Again, it's been your sports guy, Kendrick, with TFG Sports Media. Thanks for joining me. And until next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m., I'm out. Peace.